Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're joining us for the first time, or if you are a regular, get comfortable. Seriously, just settle in.
Yeah, today is definitely not about rushing through headlines or, trying to maximize your productivity.
Exactly. Today is about slowing down the clock. We are going to light a proverbial candle, maybe pour a glass of something, nice tea, wine, whatever your vibe is, and we're stepping into the mind of one of the most fascinating metaphysical teachers of the 20th century.
It really is a total shift in gears from our usual fast-paced stuff.
Hmm?
We are looking at the Seth Material today. And to be incredibly specific, we aren't just broadly talking about the philosophy. We are doing a deep dive into session 405.
Right, from the early sessions, book 8. Let's put a timestamp on this, save the context. The date of record is April 18th, 1968.
Which, if you know your history, was just a massively chaotic year. I mean, the world was loud.
So loud.
But inside Jane Roberts' apartment in Elmira, New York, the chaos was of a much more internal, quiet, existential variety.
And before we completely unlock the vault on this session, let's just set the vibe for you. This isn't a lecture, this isn't a sermon, this is just us hanging out, looking at a really specific moment in time where a woman named Jane Roberts, who channeled this personality known as Seth, was having, frankly, a terrible week.
A genuinely bad week.
Right. And out of that bad week came this session that touches on literally everything, from what exactly a ghost is, to career advice from a non-physical entity, to the absolute nature of suffering itself.
It is profound. It's surprisingly funny in spots, and it is very chill.
It is. But before we go any further into the deep dive, we do have some important housekeeping to do.
Oh, right. The credits.
Yeah, we are
Yeah.
diving deep into this content, but we have to give credit where it's due. All the content we are discussing today is based on the Seth Material, which is published by the New Awareness Network.
Absolutely. And if what we talk about today rings a bell for you, or if you just want to have your mind blown on a regular basis, you really need to study the books.
Don't just take our word for it.
Exactly. Go to the source. You can find them at sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions.
And just for the record, so everyone is clear, this deep dive will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to learn, not to sell you a white robe.
Which, ironically, is exactly what Seth would want to hear.
So true, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, let's set the scene for you. It's April 18th, 1968. Jane Roberts, who Seth refers to as Ruburt, is in a major funk.
A deep funk. Here's the context you need. Jane was a writer. That was her core identity. And she had written a book, not a Seth book, but her own book. A dream book, which was likely a study on dreams from her own perspective.
Yeah.
She sent it to Prentice Hall, a major publisher. And she was waiting for that big yes.
The moment every creative person waits for,
The validation.
Exactly, and she got the letter. But it was a no.
Ouch.
It was a rejection. But it was a really weird rejection. The editor basically said, we don't want this dream book, but we love the Seth stuff. Keep sending us that. That is just brutal. It's like a musician sending a demo tape of their heartfelt acoustic folk songs, and the record label says, hey, we hate your folk songs, but that weird techno stuff you do in your sleep, we love that.
That is exactly what it felt like to her. And it triggered this massive identity crisis. Jane was confused. She felt rejected as a writer, but validated as a medium.
She didn't want to be a medium.
No, not at all. She was having a real crisis of direction. So on this Thursday night at 9 p.m., she and her husband, Rob, hold a session to sort it out.
And right off the bat, the physical description of the session is so interesting. Rob's notes say Jane began speaking in a good trance, but at a somewhat slower pace than usual, and her eyes didn't open as much.
That's a key detail to pick up on.
Yeah.
Usually Seth is booming, energetic, his eyes are wide open, he's tossing cigar smoke around, pacing around the room.
Yeah.
But here, the energy is different. It's heavier, more intimate. Seth starts by addressing the elephant in the room right away. Jane isn't fully committed.
He actually says Ruburt is not fully familiarized with the material, which is kind of funny because she's the one speaking it.
But she's not studying it. She's channeling it, then just going back to her regular life. Seth says she needs to be clear in her mind about what he has said about himself versus what she thinks he is.
And this brings us to part 1 of our deep dive, the identity crisis. Or, as I like to call it, I am not a white-robed spirit.
Right. because Jane had been reading other books. She was reading about Edgar Cayce, Ruth Montgomery, all that typical spiritualist stuff from the 60s.
Yeah.
And she was subconsciously trying to shove Seth into that exact same box.
She wanted him to be a classic ghost, like, ooh, I am the spirit of your grandfather, here to tell you where the gold is buried.
And Seth is having absolutely none of it. He explicitly says, the very point of my material is precisely that it goes beyond ideas conventionally held in most, quote, mediumistic circles.
He's fully rejecting the label. He says he is not, therefore, supposed to think of me as some sort of ghostly spirit in those terms.
Because the word ghost implies someone who was just alive and is now dead and is just sort of hanging around a dusty attic. Seth is defining himself as something much vaster. He uses a very specific term here. He calls himself an energy essence personality.
An energy essence personality. That sounds way more sci-fi than spiritual.
It is almost technical. He says, I am not physical, but the picture of a white-robed spirit with those connotations is not one I have given him. He's basically saying, stop dressing me up in your mental costumes.
I love the analogy he uses next. He compares Jane to a wireless receiver.
Yes. He says, Ruburt operates as an excellent wireless and brings in messages from beyond those usually received.
It's such a 1968 analogy, too. The wireless. But it works perfectly for you to understand what's happening. If you have a high-end radio that can pick up frequencies from deep space, why are you trying to use it to listen to the local AM talk radio station?
That is exactly it. Seth explains that in ordinary seances, you usually reach personalities who are recently dead. They're still highly attached to the physical environment. They're like people who just left the room and are standing out in the hallway.
But Seth is in a different building entirely, maybe a different zip code.
Or a totally different dimension. He says he is reincarnated, and he is aware of a larger existence. He isn't just a dead guy. He's a multi-dimensional entity. And Jane's confusion comes from trying to make him fit the dead guy mold simply because that's what she read in books.
It's the classic square peg, round hole problem. But the hole is a seance room, and the peg is a hyper-intelligent energy gestalt.
And this leads to a really interesting psychological point Seth makes about Jane. He says any conflict she feels is a result of her own subconscious prejudice. She has a bias against what she's actually doing because she thinks it should look like what she's read about.
He even lists them out. He says he is not Cayce, nor Montgomery, nor the woman with the crystal ball.
Imagine being told by a disembodied entity, hey, stop comparing yourself to the lady with the crystal ball.
Yeah.
It's a massive reality check.
It really is. It's like Seth is saying, I am an original, stop trying to find my precedent in the library. And this brings us to the second part of the session, which I found fascinating. It's about vocabulary, specifically the G word.
God.
Yeah. Seth talks about why he avoided using the word God in the early sessions, and I think this is so crucial for you, the listener, to understand because a lot of spiritual texts just throw that word around constantly.
Seth is very precise with language. He says, in the past, I did indeed avoid using the word God. And he explains exactly why. He says the word itself hardly approximates the true reality it tries to portray.
It's a branding issue.
In a way, yes, it is. He says the word automatically limits the reality of all that is by its very connotations. As soon as you say God, people instantly picture a man with a beard sitting on a cloud, or a judge, or a strict father figure.
Right. You instantly download 2,000 years of religious baggage.
Exactly. Seth prefers the term all that is. It's expansive, it's impersonal, but fully inclusive. He notes that he only started using the word God recently because Jane and her students felt more comfortable with it.
Wait, so he was dumbing it down for them?
Accommodating them, I'd say. He says it was the term Ruburt thought should be used. But then, ironically, this caused a major backlash inside Jane's own mind.
Oh, this is the false priest syndrome part.
This is a heavy moment in the session. Jane felt two-faced. She felt guilty. Because on one hand, she's channeling this profound material that uses the word God occasionally now, but personally, she doesn't feel spiritual in the traditional religious sense at all.
She felt like a fraud.
She felt exactly like a false priest. Seth says he felt inadequate, he felt two-faced, only when he tried to squeeze the material into smaller molds that cannot hold it.
Man, that is such a powerful line, squeezing the material into smaller molds. It's like she was trying to take this massive cosmic truth and package it into a Sunday school lesson. And she felt guilty because she knew she wasn't a Sunday school teacher.
Precisely. She was judging herself by the standards of a religion she didn't even believe in anymore. Seth says this was caused by old, rigid childhood concepts.
It's wild how that stuff sticks with you. You can be a grown woman channeling a multidimensional entity, and you're still worried that you aren't being a good girl according to the rules you learned when you were 6 years old.
That is the human condition right there.
Yeah.
Seth reassures her, though. He says there is absolutely nothing in the material to be ashamed of intellectually or emotionally. He says his work with the material can and should weld his emotions and intellect together in a strong, powerful force.
He wants her to integrate, not to separate the intellectual Jane from the psychic Jane. They need to be one cohesive team.
And that requires dropping the white robes entirely. He says essentially, I don't need you to be saintly. I need you to be an open channel.
Which is a perfect segue to the career advice section. Because if she's not supposed to be a saint, what is she supposed to be? A writer.
Well, this is where that rejection letter from Prentice Hall comes back into the picture. Part 3. Career counseling from an energy essence.
Just imagine getting career advice from a ghost. Well, not a ghost. An energy essence personality.
It's definitely better than getting it on LinkedIn. So Jane is holding this rejection letter. She's really bummed. She thinks she wasted her time writing this dream book.
And what does Seth say?
He says, the energy in this book was not wasted. He calls the book a springboard.
A springboard, meaning it was just a way to get to the next place.
Exactly. He says it was not used as wisely as it could have been, but the effort was necessary. And here's the kicker, Jane had wondered. If Seth is so smart and psychic, why didn't he tell me the book would be rejected? Why did he let me waste months writing it?
That is the classic question, isn't it? Why didn't you warn me? It's the question everyone asks psychics.
Seth's answer is profound. He says, had I told him, he would have recreated the problem in other terms.
Whoa, let's really unpack that.
He's saying that Jane had an internal problem she needed to work out. Writing the book was the physical way she worked it out. If Seth had stopped her, she wouldn't have learned the lesson. She would have just faced the exact same creative block somewhere else. He says he needed to finish the book to perceive the problem.
So the failure was the point, or rather, the process of failing was the necessary learning curve.
The process of completing it was the learning. Seth says to solve it for him is never possible, never in the long run possible.
That is some serious tough love.
It is empowerment. If an entity just magically solves all your problems, you never grow. It's like doing a kid's math homework for them. They get an A, but they learn absolutely nothing.
Okay, so what does he say about the publisher? This Frederick Fell guy.
Oh, this part is delicious.
Yeah.
Seth essentially psychoanalyzes the publisher from afar. He describes Frederick Fell as a guy who was privately enthralled by the Seth Material, but business-wise overly cautious.
A classic suit. Wants to believe in magic, but is terrified it won't sell.
Seth says Fell is afraid of his own intuitions and afraid of success.
Afraid of success. Is that really a thing in this context?
Absolutely. If you succeed with something weird like the Seth Material, your whole reputation in publishing changes. You become that guy who publishes the ghost books. Seth says Fell is secretly wondering if he was taken as a fool.
So Seth's advice to Jane regarding the business side is just shake it off.
Pretty much. He says, shake that Ruburt loose from the influence of others in the field. He tells her to stop waiting for permission from these cautious businessmen, and he gives her a very specific directive for the summer.
Homework from the other side.
He says, I suggest that this summer, Ruburt become much more familiar with the Seth Material. It is his touchstone.
He's telling her to read her own book, or rather, the transcripts of their sessions.
Yes. He's saying, the gold mine is right here under your feet.
Yeah.
Stop trying to dig in the neighbor's yard. He tells her to let go of the other book ideas for now. He says he will do the sort of book he had in mind, but at a later date, and it will be a better book.
That is hopeful. It's not a no, never. It's a not yet. You aren't ready.
Because she was trying to use Seth's ideas in her own voice, without fully understanding them yet. Seth is saying, get to know me first, then write.
I love how practical this is. It's very grounded advice. Study your material, ignore the nervous publisher, trust the timing.
It is. But then the session shifts, and this is where we get into what I honestly think is the most beautiful part of the transcript.
This is part 4, the philosophy of great work.
Yes. Rob, Jane's husband, asked a question. He'd been talking earlier about his own painting. He asked Seth, do you think I was sounding off earlier when I talked about doing some great work painting?
Basically asking, am I just bragging or can I actually do this?
And Seth says, I do not. I expect that you shall.
Boom! Instant validation.
But then Seth pivots to talk about the nature of art and suffering. Rob had apparently mentioned something about tragedy being necessary for art. and Seth challenges that idea completely.
This is the moment that gave me actual chills reading it.
Seth says, "Great work stands alone. It always grows out of experience." But he clarifies that you don't need to seek out tragedy. But if you are currently in it, that's a different story.
He uses the flower metaphor here.
He says, "The flowers thrust themselves up through soil, but they hardly consider the soil or thrusting a tragedy, nor resent the time spent in the frozen earth.
Nor resent the time spent in the frozen earth.
For they realize the frozen earth is a condition of their blossoming, a challenge that is an aid, not a hindrance."
Man.
That hits different.
Reframes suffering completely. It's not a punishment. It's the frozen earth. It's the resistance you need to push against to become strong.
And then the quote about light.
The light does not resent the darkness which it illuminates, you see. Your inner self is aware of this.
The light does not resent the darkness. That's the tweet, that's the tattoo right there. It's a profound shift in perspective. Usually, we think of light actively fighting darkness, or the flower fighting the dirt. Seth says no. The dirt is the condition for the flower. The darkness is the canvas for the light. There is no resentment. There is only becoming.
It makes Jane's rejection letter seem pretty small in comparison.
Exactly. The rejection was just a bit of frozen earth, a condition for her future blossoming.
So we've covered identity, we've covered career advice, we've covered the philosophy of art. But there is one more thing plaguing Jane in this session.
Her arm.
Right, part 5. The fear of thought. Jane is in physical pain.
She has these lingering symptoms in her arm. And Seth diagnoses the root cause. And it is not a pinched nerve. It's a pinched philosophy.
Mental hygiene gone wrong.
Jane knows that thoughts create reality. That is the core tenet of the entire Seth Material. But she has interpreted this in a terrifying way. She thinks that if she has a negative thought, just a spontaneous flash of anger or resentment, that she is literally hurting people.
Like she has a loaded gun in her mind at all times.
Exactly. So she is clamping down hard on her thoughts. Yeah. She is inhibiting herself constantly. She is watching her thoughts way too closely.
I think a lot of people do this when they first get into manifestation or positive thinking. They get terrified of having a bad thought.
It's a very common trap. Seth calls it overconscientiousness. He says she is afraid of his own intuitions in a way. He says he is reacting in an exaggerated manner to a truth, and the truth is that thoughts cause reality.
So how does Seth fix this? Does he just tell her to think happier thoughts?
No. He tells her to relax. He says, you are responsible for your thoughts. However, your spontaneous thoughts are not nearly as destructive as he imagines. And in over-inhibiting them, he also inhibits purely spontaneous, joyful thoughts.
So by blocking the bad, she's blocking the good. She's clogging the pipe completely.
Precisely. Seth says, natural thought, and he underlines natural, will be more positive than negative.
That is a huge statement of faith in human nature. He's saying if you just let your mind flow naturally, it defaults to good.
Yes. He believes the core of the self is positive. So if you stop policing yourself, you won't turn into a monster. You'll actually become healthier. He says the arm symptoms are just an inhibiting factor. It's the physical manifestation of her holding back her energy.
And he gives some very practical, almost funny advice on how to break this cycle.
Take your vacation. Give him physical activity. And my absolute favorite, stay away from his mother until I tell you.
Seth dropping the mother-in-law boundaries.
His mother boundaries. He says he does not have to prove he is all saintly yet.
There it is again, the saintly trap. Jane is trying so hard to be good that she is making herself physically sick.
And Seth is giving her permission to just be human, to be annoyed, to be spontaneous, to trust that her inner self isn't a demon waiting to escape, but a flower waiting to bloom.
It's such a relief to hear that. You don't have to be perfect to be spiritual. You don't have to monitor every micro thought.
No. In fact, monitoring every thought is the exact opposite of the great work. The flower doesn't sit in the dirt worrying if it's growing the right way. It just grows.
It just grows.
Seth mentions a book here too, Psycho-Cybernetics. He says it was good for Jane because it stopped her conscious brooding.
Anything to get out of that tight loop of worry.
Exactly. The overarching message is to trust your spontaneity. It will not betray you.
So let's bring this all together for you. We've unpacked a lot from just 1 hour of a trance session in 1968. What are the big takeaways for our listener today?
I think there are 3 main pillars here. First, don't box yourself in. Jane tried to fit Seth into a white-robed spirit box, and it caused her massive anxiety. You might be trying to fit your own life or career into a box that just doesn't fit. You are an energy essence personality. You are complex. Own that.
Second, the frozen earth is necessary. If you are dealing with rejection, like Jane was with her book, or any kind of struggle, don't resent it. It's the soil. It's the exact condition required for your blossoming.
And third, stop fearing your own mind. Spontaneity is safe. If you inhibit your bad thoughts, you kill your good ones too. Trust that your natural state is positive.
It really is a profound message of self-trust. Trust your essence, trust your struggle, trust your thoughts.
And trust the timing. Jane Roberts went on to publish the Seth Material, Seth Speaks, the Nature of Personal Reality books that sold millions of copies and completely changed the landscape of metaphysics.
But she had to get that rejection letter first.
She absolutely had to go through the frozen earth.
It's wild to think about. If Prentice Hall had said yes to her dream book, maybe she would have been too busy to deepen her trance work. Maybe we wouldn't have Seth Speaks at all.
That is the bigger picture Seth is always talking about.
Well, this has been an incredible journey. I feel calmer just talking about it.
It is good material. It really settles the soul.
Before we let you go, here is a final provocative thought to chew on this week. We talked about the light not resenting the darkness. So ask yourself this: if the light doesn't resent the darkness it illuminates, how much of your current struggle is actually just the necessary soil for your next phase of existence? Are you fighting the dirt, or are you growing through it?
That is really something to think about.
Huge thanks again to the New Awareness Network for keeping this material alive.
Please, go visit sethcenter.com/theearlysessions. Buy the books. Read the raw sessions yourself. We only scratched the surface of one session today. There are hundreds of them.
And thanks to you for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next wave.
Stay spontaneous.
And don't wear a white robe unless you really want to. See ya!